What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Piggy Bank, your casual gaming podcast that goes live every Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. I am your host of the week, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
You're not the usual host. I'm certainly not the usual host. So who is the usual host?
I'm not. Usually it's Phil Shoemaker, but he is out sick right now. He woke up not feeling too well. So we're holding it down for him for this week, and we're here to talk to you all about video games, man. It's our casual gaming podcast in which we talk about games we've been playing. We played little mini games throughout the course of the show. That's, fun, little entertaining things. And we just have a, just general chat about life and everything that's going on in the world of a gamer. So, Connor, let me start off real quick and ask, what have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing Lords of the Fallen, which just finished doing a review of it. Review came out the week before the time you're watching this. And a little bit less than a week, 6 days, 5 days, 5 days, 5 days.
6 days.
Monday, this last month.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. No, it goes out. It goes out on Sunday nights.
It does go. Mom.
Yes, because and the reason it goes out on Sunday nights is you can watch us live over at twitch.tv/2pennygames. Excuse me, Lord, a hiccup caught me at a bad time. Lord of life. Twitch.tv/2pennygames Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Time, where you can watch us record all of our podcasts live right now, like Squared Mo in the chat, talking about some bloopers because I messed up the first intro. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to all of those channels. Links are in the description down below. And Connor, you are correct. We did just have our review of Lords of the Fallen, your review of it, and you gotta go check it out to go see what all those general impressions are. Was that all you've been playing this week?
No, Tavin. I've been playing an amazing game called Warhammer 40k Darktide. A game that when it came out had a lot of unfinished mechanics, unfinished things that you can do in the game, and a not fully realized class system, which they recently made major updates to. And so now the game is way more fun. It is the time to jump on it. The class system is very interesting, where you constantly put points into a tree as usual, but it gives you usually the ability at 3 different points to have 3 different main abilities, and when you choose one of them, it locks the other ones out. Everything else are buffs to either those abilities or basic buffs to damage or how fast you can swing your weapon. Doesn't have any technical issues anymore. And you're more easily able to go and get new pieces of armor and new weapons and whatnot. Which, in tandem with the fact that the game already had really solid gameplay to begin with, it's satisfying to know that they aren't screwing this up more than they already did.
Very good. Squared Mo in the chat says Valorant's the only thing needing review. New agent dropping soon. We played Valorant at launch for a long time, and then I think we just kind of burned out. Is that even the right word to say on it? We love ourselves some multiplayer gaming, and we love ourselves some competitive games like such, but we like to move on. We don't like, playing 1 or 2 games all the time. We like to diversify here. I have been playing mostly Spider-Man 2, which you can see the review coming up here soon to the channel. I believe tomorrow by the time you're listening to this on YouTube. But on Twitch, it'll be probably next week is when I review that one. But also on the channel is our review for Metal Gear Solid Masters Collection, and Super Mario Wonder will be dropping earlier on YouTube, later on Twitch. But I dabbled a little bit in Super Mario Wonder. Played I don't know 2 or 3 levels, and it's wonderful. And I'm excited to have our full review with Phil later this week. It's going to be very, very exciting time. Go check that out, youtube.com/@2pennygames. Spider-Man 2.
A lot of reviews are coming.
A lot of reviews. Spider-Man 2, I rolled credits last night, but I'm not ready to share my thoughts just yet. I got more side stuff that I need to do. So make sure you subscribe and keep in tune for all of that. But man, a lot of games out right now, and you're out here playing a game from last year.
Yeah. Proud and loud and proud, brother. Loud
Connor,
and proud.
A lot of games coming out this year, a lot of great games, and it's been a very interesting conversation, so much so that I want to jump into our first topic of the day, our first mini game of the day. I'm so used to doing the Gamescast. Here we go. Our first minigame of the day, which is more just a freeform conversation type thing happening today. I want to talk about the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, and I want to talk about the Game of the Year. I want to have a little prediction / conversation about what is going to be nominated for Game of the Year. Now, for the Game Awards, they only have 6 slots for Game of the Year. I don't suspect that they're going to increase the amount of slots that they want for this year. You're shaking your head. You agree with me on that?
No, yeah, no, you're right. I remember 2010 where they had what was it, 9 entries of games. They had a shit ton of them.
I don't know. I don't think that's right. They had a smaller amount and then they increased it a few years ago. I think they went from 5 to 6. I think they added one on, but I don't recall exactly. Also, Game Awards only been around since 2013, so you suck.
Game Awards, as they know, you know what I mean. Not all Keighley.
It's the brand, man. It's the brand, and
Game of the Year.
Yeah, well, I think the Keighleys are our best version of branding for Game Awards for a Game of the Year conversation. It's the closest thing we have to an Oscars, to a Grammys, to a Tonys, things like that. Now, granted, there are other award shows like the Golden Globes and stuff like that, but let's be honest, they're not as interesting as Oscar night and so forth. And I think for games, it's the Game Awards. Jeff Keighley's the Game Awards, I think, are our closest thing to an Oscar night. And so I'm interested in, Connor, what could potentially be in the Big Six? What are the Game Awards Big Six? So let's talk about it right now. There's been a lot of great games this year. It's a very highly competitive year. So much so that I think any indie game this year probably just not going to make it just because of the volume of crazy AAAs that have come out this year. Connor, what is on your short? Let's start with what games are definitively not a chance they're not going to be on the list.
Lords of the Fallen.
You misheard my question. What games? Let me rephrase it. What games will definitively be on there no matter what?
Oh, okay. Well, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2. Beyond that, those are shoe-ins. Beyond, I honestly want to say that Resident Evil 4 is also going to be on that list.
I want to say that too, but I'm not 100% sure it does. For me, lock-ins, I think it's a 3-horse race right now. I think it's between Spider-Man and Baldur's Gate, like you said, but I think also a big contender that you're forgetting about is Tears of the Kingdom.
Man. Yes, Tears of the Kingdom. They came out this year.
Yeah, and really, pretty much all year, it's been a 2-horse race between Tears and Baldur's Gate, but I think Spider-Man is leaving a big enough impression that it's still in this conversation. It's still here.
That's true, and I hope that those are the best confirmed coming on to the list this year. Can we go into the more speculative area where it's very likely, but not entirely?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you already mentioned Resident Evil 4. Let's have a conversation about that. Yeah. Does Resident Evil 4 make the list?
I feel like it has to. That had, as far as the games that came out this year, it had some of the most nuanced conversation in it. There's old people coming back playing Resident Evil 4, saying how much they liked it. New people saying how much they liked it. And, that game just has, even though it's gone over to a different type of game from the original Resident Evil 4, it still has tons of charm. At least in my eyes, it's really stuck in my head as one of the big games this year. And I just can't knock it out of my head.
I agree with you. I think Resident Evil 4 hit a good balance of new and old. And I follow Resident Evil closely. And I've been a huge fan of the remake series. And both Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, more so 3 than 2, but 2 also got criticized for leaving things out or changing mechanics or not having certain mechanics in the game anymore that got taken out. Resident Evil 2, a lot less so. I think it's called the Sting system or something like that, where basically a character will pick up an item. There are moments in the original Resident Evil 2 where a character will pick up an item, and then when you go through the B storyline, that item won't be there, and you're forced to grab the other item that's there or whatever. That's not in the remake, and some people criticized it for that, and to sort of create unity amongst the playthroughs. Not really there in the remake. Resident Evil 3 got knocked for cutting out huge sections of the game, whereas Resident Evil 4, I didn't hear that. There are things missing in Resident Evil 4, but nobody seems to care that they're missing. There are boss fights upon boss fights that got cut, and nobody really cares. And I think it's because they knew what they needed to do to stay faithful and stay true to the original game, and then what they could improve upon, what could they get rid of, and what could they add to sort of make that experience more wholesome. Yeah, I think Resident Evil 4 is one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, and they did.
Yeah, and even though I think as of right now, I don't even know if it's in my top 5 anymore. But like it's definitely like the impression it left, the splash it made. It's definitely I think it's more likely in there than not. Another game that I think is more likely in there than not is probably going to be Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Hmm.
I think it sort of reinvigorated and reminded people why 2D Mario games are so beloved, and it's got a lot of interesting mechanics on it. The only thing is that it came out the same day as Spider-Man 2, and the entire conversation online, at least in my sphere, maybe this is the algorithm working against me. The entire conversation has been about Spider-Man,
It is.
so maybe that's sort of overshadowing what Mario is doing. But it's so hard for me to see Mario not making it. You
Hmm.
can make an argument that like, oh well, like, um, we already have Zelda, so we already have a representative of Nintendo in the list. But like, I mean, how do you don't score that well? You don't do all of those things and not have it in, right? I mean, Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild were both nominated for Game of the Year when those came out.
Never.
So and granted, 2D, 3D is gonna garner a wider audience, but Mario Wonder is a really good game, and I'd be shocked if it wasn't there.
So that leaves us basically two more.
For the most part, I think we both lock in Resident Evil 4 for sure, which puts us at 4 and gives us 2 more. And now we have a more general conversation about some other options in this year. Let's talk Final Fantasy 16. Connor, does Final Fantasy 16 make
Yes.
the list?
It made a pretty substantial splash. I think so, but yeah, no. What am I talking? He's going to be Final Fantasy 16. It's not going to win, most certainly not,
No,
but it's going to be on there. I think there's no chance that it's not.
dude.
I completely forgot. Well, I think there's a chance that it's not, but it's slim.
Okay.
I was going to say Armored Core 6, but then I'm also remembering, Dead Space Remake came out.
Yeah.
We were discussing a little bit of that recently. I think Resident Evil 4 overall had more of an impression this year, and that would be chosen as far as horror games go over Dead Space. But it was highly received, so it still could get in there as well. The other big one is Sea of Stars, but like you said, indie games they may not be able to make such a splash this year when they're thinking.
I don't think there's room for Sea of Stars right now. I love Sea of Stars. It's one of my favorite games that I've played this year. But it's just such a jam-packed year, and the Game Awards tends to go a little more mainstream, a little more populist, unless like an indie game really shows out and shows us what's up. To me, if any, not even indie, but if any smaller game comes out, it's between Sea of Stars or Hi-Fi Rush to me. And if I were to pick one of those
Yeah.
two, I think Hi-Fi Rush made the bigger splash this year, and
It would,
people were more impressed with that. That's not an indie game by any means of the or standard, but it was a smaller game that surprised a lot of people and impressed a lot of people. I don't think it's even in the conversation of actually winning, but nominating, I could kind of see it. But again, I just think there's too many big heavy hitters. Let's go for Final Fantasy 16 here, man. That was a game that like came out, had a lot of praise, and then to me, kind of disappeared. Like the conversation started and ended in that same week. And now, granted, that's just kind of how time and games and paying attention to the industry works. But more so than anything else, I feel like Final Fantasy 16 dropped off and nobody cared anymore after a certain period of time. And in fact, I feel like some of the reception turned a little negative after a while.
Hmm. I didn't really see too much negative over there, but definitely people stopped talking about it, which is one of the reasons why I'm like it's not going to win. Compare that to Baldur's Gate 3, which has just continuously been talked about. Spider-Man 2, we'll see as time goes on. But yeah,
Spider-Man 2 kind of hits every mark where it's like it's Spider-Man mainstream popularity working.
Yeah.
It's a big PlayStation title. It's got really good gameplay. It's story focused and it's recent.
Hmm. And it's going to be recent, closer. It's going to be closer to the Game of the Years compared to Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it? Month and a half, 2 months from now, we're going to probably have the award ceremony. 2 months. So, I do think it's less than, like a month and a half almost. So I think, ultimately, when you're in the conversation of the best games of the year, I don't think that's going to be brought up as much. Honestly, I completely forgot about Hi-Fi Rush. I would just due to how that like unique that game was and how out of the blue it was. I think that might make people jump up and say, "Oh yeah, remember Hi-Fi Rush?" As far as like indie games, as you were saying, it's not an indie game, but more on that scale than the AAA ones. I think that one could edge its way into the year nominations.
It could, man, but I mean, again, like we still have so much
Mm-hmm.
more. You brought up Armored Core 6. I don't think Armored Core makes the cut at all. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Armored Core 6 is a great game. I don't think it made any splash. Like, and I think it did well for an Armored Core game, but a game coming from Software who has back-to-back winnings with Sekiro and then Elden Ring. I'm not going to say they didn't show up because they definitely showed up for Armored Core 6. Armored Core 6 is a great game, but it didn't make any splash like everything else kind of made. Like it was just kind of like, oh yeah, an Armored Core is good. Like and people kind of left it at that, which is unfortunate because I think it's underselling how good Armored Core 6 really is.
That's why I was kind of tentative about saying it's in the running because there's so many other games. But I just like the idea, and it sticks in my mind that FromSoft just kind of comes in and is like, well, we're securing a spot. We're getting that spot.
We're in the conversation no matter what. And let's be fair, they are in the conversation. Someone will vote for Armored Core 6 to be nominated. You know, when Jeff Keighley sends out the invitations to all the games journalism, game press outlets and all that. Like Armored Core 6 will be in that conversation and will have a voice. But is it enough to make those 6? I don't know. I feel like to make the 6, you need to be in everybody's like top 3 at least. And if you start slipping into that 5 or 6 range, you're not going to make it, which is why I think Final Fantasy 16 will make the nominations list, but I think just barely. Like if it comes out and it's not on the list, that will not be overly surprising to me. One game that I think personally deserves to be on the list, should be on the list, made the splash, is popular enough, but has no chance of winning is Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Yes.
Because it's one of those things. It was big. It made a splash. People cared. But it came with a whole host of problems. And even if it didn't come with all those technical difficulties at the end of the day, I don't think it doesn't have the stuff up next to the big 3 that we already talked about. And even like I think it would rank lower on the list if you include games like Super Mario Wonder. But specifically just because it kind of came out around the same time. How does Survivor in your mind, Connor? Because you fully played both of those games. How does Survivor pair up against Final Fantasy 16 to you?
Yeah. Yep. They're very similar in terms of their quality in my eyes. I think ultimately though, due to the fact that you have Star Wars Survivor being, having lightsabers, having the Star Wars flair to it, plus having just a better combat system, will make if it was just that, I changed my mind. I would say Survivor, but I think ultimately it's going to be 16 due to its epic moments that the game provides, the boss fights that it does. When you compare that to, even though the combat system being better in Survivor, it did have so many technical issues, and I do think that still when people look at it, I didn't have super big, technical problems, but I could see many people looking back at their experience and saying, "Oh, I remember I had this problem and this issue, and here we go." Versus all these other ones we said, all these other ones we've said, you have your thoughts about them, but they came out working as intended. That one did not. So I think that prevents it from being in the Game of the Year nomination. But then again, easily I can see the critics just kind of overlooking that and being like, well, the core game itself was really fun, and that deserves the nominee.
Okay. How about Starfield? Xbox game. Well, we brought up Hi-Fi Rush before Starfield. You don't think at all?
Mm-mm.
Starfield is in some people's Game of the Year conversation.
Yeah, but it's not going to be in the official ranking of it. So many people were so whatever on it, and it made the splash due to it being the long-awaited Starfield. But the game itself, no one seemed to go crazy. The most crazy I saw people go about it were the physics mechanics, which and the twist. Which when I found out the twist, which that's the thing, you gotta get to the twist. I heard it and I was like, that's a stupid fucking twist. Not from a writing perspective, but in terms of that's gonna make me like the game more? No, it's not. Not at all. I won't say what it is, but it just confounded me. It's like
You're
that's
talking
the big
you're
thing.
talking the ending of the game that
Yeah.
that plays into New Game Plus. Yeah.
And when I heard people say like, "Oh, but this is what it does," I'm like, "Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all," because the base game just doesn't deliver.
I shouldn't have to play 30 hours to get to this thing.
Yes,
That
right.
does sound cool, but I got to play 30 hours for it? No, absolutely not. No, yeah, I agree. Connor, would you call Starfield, is that a win for Xbox? Is that a big game for well, obviously it's a big game for Xbox, but is it a win? Can they put that in their win hat?
It made a bunch of money. Yeah, they easily can. That's ultimately what matters in the game. From Xboxes and Bethesdas and whatever their take on things. If it makes money, that's enough. The reviews are nice, they're good, but if Redfall had the reviews it did, yet still sold major numbers, they probably wouldn't have. Like Phil Spencer went on the podcast, the Kind of Funny Games podcast, and talked about it. And I don't think that would have happened if it sold a bunch of money. But it didn't. It disappointed in all areas.
Well, he didn't go on that. He was scheduled to be on that podcast before the release of Redfall.
Oh, was he? Oh,
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Well, never mind on that part. But ultimately, it didn't even make money. It was a failure across the board. Whereas Starfield, we can say that the expectations, it didn't live up to them. The game was somewhat bland, but it made tons of money.
So Connor, why are we willing to accept that Hi-Fi Rush might be in the list, but Starfield probably not? Because I agree with you. I don't think Starfield makes it at all. I don't think. I think Starfield seems to have been a good game, but I don't think it was good enough. And it came with a bunch of expectations that ultimately didn't 100% meet.
Yeah. So your question was
why are we
Rush?
why are we like Hi-Fi Rush maybe, hard maybe, why is Starfield a no?
Oh, well, because impact. First of all, I think the impact of Armored Core 6, Hi-Fi Rush was greater than the impact of Starfield. Because Starfield, like I said, it was kind of disappointing to many people. Hi-Fi Rush was the exact opposite. It had no expectations, and then it blew everyone out of the water. They were like, look at this amazing game. It's so fun. It's charming. It's got a good style to it. Meanwhile, Starfield didn't get any of those accolades. I think if it does get nominated, obviously we said that it's not going to. But if it did over Hi-Fi Rush, I think that's really just name brand coming in and, being the only factor that caused.
I mean, Starfield was more popular than Hi-Fi Rush. Like, more people played it.
Yeah, but less people liked it.
That's true. That's true. I agree with that. I think it was just a matter of like, hey, did you play this Hi-Fi Rush game? It's pretty cool. Oh, maybe if I get around to it. And then Starfield was like, everybody had to have an opinion about it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like I said, the impact of Starfield itself is still bigger. It's just not a payoff with that game. At least not the payoff that gamers were hoping for.
Yeah. And I mean, man, there's so many games that we haven't even really dive deep into. You mentioned it tangentially, but Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space.
Dead Space ranks high for me, man. I really, really liked Dead Space. I had a great time with it, but it's such a traditional remake, and it is so faithful to the original. And it is arguably just more Dead Space. I think Dead Space has a lot more to offer than just being more Dead Space. I think it impressed the people it needed to impress, and didn't, and maybe got some new players in, got a whole bunch of new players who had never played a Dead Space game before, and got them in on it, which is cool and exciting, and it's a great game. And it makes it was a great look for EA Motive. But I just don't know if it had the mainstream hit like a Resident Evil 4 did, like in Alan Wake 2 potentially will. And so, I think it just being such a traditional remake holds it back from that. Even though I personally like Dead Space more than RE4.
And that's fair. Dead Space, after playing it recently and playing Resident Evil 4, the original recently, and the remake recently, I'm actually the only one I haven't played is the remake of Dead Space. Just on, when you compare the base game of Resident Evil 4 to Dead Space I think clears it substantially. Resident Evil 4 definitely has that following, but Dead Space was way more interesting with the way that you dealt with enemies, the area, the setting of the Ishimura, which just does
not really a fair conversation to have, though.
No.
Yeah.
Well, no, it is.
Like,
They're only 2 years apart.
Oh, absolutely not.
What year about? Yeah,
Absolutely
they're only a
not.
couple years
Because they
apart. They're
came.
both Survival
No, they're
Horrors.
multiple years apart. Dead Space
Well,
2007. I guess, yeah. And then Resident Evil 4 2004, 2005.
yeah, 4.
But like Resident Evil 4, like paved the way for third person over the shoulder camera like shooting
Oh, I'm not.
and all of that. And
2005.
and you don't get Dead Space without Resident Evil 4.
No, I'm not talking about the impact. I'm talking about the quality of it. That's and I think when you're now, because I'm comparing that to the conversation now when both these remakes are out.
Yeah.
I think at the base of it, Dead Space has more interesting mechanics than Resident Evil 4 did. Resident
Yeah.
Evil 4, that being said, was able to do a lot more with its new one to make it way more interesting. But I guess it really does hinge just based on how you think of the games in comparison to back when their original release occurred.
Yeah.
And this is all from the mouth of a guy who hasn't played the remake of Dead Space. So maybe it just, maybe the level of quality isn't so vast as you might think, because Dead Space clearly is your preferred game over that or Resident Evil.
Oh, I don't think the level of quality is vast at all. I think these two are neck and neck with each other.
Okay.
It's just I think a lot of it is I personally prefer Dead Space over Resident Evil 4, just personally, just with the setting, the way it plays, and sort of like enemy designs and stuff. I think the world of Dead Space is more interesting than the world of Resident Evil 4. I think the story Dead Space tells is better. Yeah, there's a lot I love about Dead Space just over Resident Evil in general. And also, like, I mean, Dead Space from a design perspective plays to my likings more anyway, where it's a little Metroidvania. It's a little like slower paced. It tries to be creepy and scary. And its tone is more consistent throughout. Whereas Resident Evil 4 tries to be creepy, but wants you to have fun. And is a much more linear game. And though that's exciting and fun and a really good time, I think Resident Evil 4 is a great game. It's just that I just personally prefer the makings of a Dead Space more. But yeah, I mean, like, if you ask me which I want to replay, I'd have a hard time making a choice. I'd be like, oh fuck, man, there's things that, like, maybe I'm in the mood for Resident Evil one day and I'm in the mood for Dead Space another one. Last week, I had an itch to play Dead Space again. Even though I've already played it like 3 or 4 times at the beginning of the year. And Resident Evil 4 today, I'd rather replay right now because I'm kind of in an action game mood right now. So there's that. But yeah, in terms of Game Awards and Game of the Year, I think Resident Evil 4 clears easily over Dead Space. So Connor, is there anything big that we missed? Do we need to talk about Alan Wake 2? Alan Wake 2 seems to... It's the only major game that hasn't come out yet that has a chance, in my opinion.
Tavin, shut the fuck up.
Okay.
Avatar, Pandora, that's not one of the other big games of
What's
this year?
What's the subtitle, Connor? What's the subtitle? What is it?
Avatars of Pandora.
Uh-huh. Avatars of Pandora.
Yeah, that game's not going to be so great.
No, it's
but
not.
I think Alan Wake 2 will be. I think we're underestimating how good that game is going to be when it comes out. I think that's going to be like a major hit. That's my prediction at this point.
Will it be enough?
I think so, maybe.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, because I'll say now, because I actually haven't said it on the podcast yet. Before playing Alan Wake 2, I wanted to play the original, which I hadn't played.
Oh, okay. Go
Alan
on.
Wake 1, back in 2007. I'm probably wrong. No, 2009. I might even still be wrong then. But I played that, and it's not like the most amazing game.
I thought it was a 2011 game.
It was before 2011. At the most, it would be 2010. But
2010.
2010, okay. It's a fun game. It's a very fun game. The mechanic of shining your flashlight at enemies to make them open for attack is very fun. It's a relatively short game. I'm almost finished with it. I'll have it done by Friday to play Alan Wake 2. But it definitely kind of has a bit of repetitiveness to it, particularly with the enemy varieties that kind of throws you at them over and over and over again. And a really very interesting plot with charmy, kind of almost campy characters due to the nature of the writing, but the delivery of the writing. But the writing itself is very solid, and this one I think is going to be just more of that, but refined with Alan Wake 2. So I've just been playing it. I've become even more and more excited for what Alan Wake 2 is going to show us. And so I can't get it out of my head that that's going to be one of the the best games of this year. Maybe I'll be incredibly wrong, but I hope the hell I'm not.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's space for it. There's time for it. Before nominations come out and so forth. I just don't know. I don't know if it's gonna splash big enough for it. It's a brand name that definitely matters. But not to the level of a Resident Evil, not to the level of some of the other games we've mentioned and so forth. So Connor, let's lock it in individually. With the big six. I think undeniably, top three easily is Zelda, Baldur's Gate 3, and Spider-Man 2. And then from there, the next three can be kind of whatever you want it to be. If I were to guess between all of the games that we've mentioned today, the next three are... Wow, it's hard to say. I think we go Jedi Survivor. I think we go... Oh, I had it. Resident Evil 4. And then, to me, it's a toss-up between Final Fantasy 16 or Super Mario Wonder. I'd probably give the edge to 16.
Okay, fair enough. I'm honestly very close to you as well, but I do think Final Fantasy 16 is going to be nominated. I think that made a splash enough amongst the people who decide what game gets nominated. Mario, I think the name recognition is too hard to ignore in the fact that it's already gotten such amazing reviews.
Yeah.
It's kind of a repeat in my mind of like the year Breath of the Wild came out, and it was just that, and Odyssey came out that year, Mario Odyssey, and it was there's the Mario and Zelda games, the Titans, and I think that's going to be recreated again. Other than that, though, I think Resident Evil 4 is going to be the other game. So Resident Evil 4, Mario Wonder, and Final Fantasy 16. And the only thing that could possibly happen is Alan Wake 2 pushing 16 or Resident Evil 4 out of the conversation.
So you had the same as me. You took Survivor out and put Mario in.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you.
It's a Mario game.
All right.
What are you gonna do?
Well, we are going to find out here in the coming weeks. Stay tuned with us when all that happens, and of course, we will be having a predictions episode. I believe on the Gamescast. That's usually a Gamescast thing, is we do a predictions episode and then reactions and all this. So yeah, keep an eye out for all of that fun stuff live on the channel when the time comes. Connor, we're gonna stop it there and we're gonna move on to our next and final mini game of the day. What have you got for us, son?
Mini game. Well, I love unique mechanics in games.
Ooh.
Lords of the Fallen, which you can play. You can see that review. Once again, did that recently. Has a mechanic where you can use a lamp to go into another world and view into another world that's vastly different from the living world. And I was thinking while playing that, what is the best game mechanics? What game mechanics really just go above and beyond to make the list of the greatest that have ever been done? And so we're just gonna choose 5, decide which ones we think are the best out there.
It's a draft pick. Game mechanics.
It's a draft pick with 2 people.
Yeah.
So a little bit easier, actually.
A little bit easier.
Tavin?
Yeah.
Call it. Heads or tails?
Heads. He didn't.
Seems I will be going first.
Oh, you're going first. Okay, great.
I will. I'll choose that. And I already. I'm gonna have to go with, just because it's one that, honestly, it's the most disappointing system mechanic in a way, and that's the Nemesis system from the old Shadow of War Mordor games, the Lord of the Rings games that have been unable to escape that realm, and that's a very sad thing. Especially when you compare it to like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which had bounty hunters hunting you. It would have been perfect for that game.
Oh, it would have been so good.
Yeah, it would have put a whole other mechanic into it. But unfortunately, the Nemesis system remains locked in jail for now.
Probably forever. Probably not getting that mechanic back outside of a WB game. You know, that would be cool in a Batman game. You know,
it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, where you're like knocking out thugs in the open world or whatever, and then eventually like a thug comes back and goes, "Hey, motherfucker, I'm here," yada yada.
And then they kind of like create their own in-game supervillains, because obviously they always use the ones that have been written in comic books about for years. But that's when they can take some artistic liberty to be like, here's the rat man. He has rats all over him, and you beat him up, and he got covered in rats when he woke up. Like wacky stuff like that, which you can, or cool stuff or whatever, and that'd be cool.
I think
Be
the
nice.
hardest part about maybe doing it in a Batman game is that like Batman breaks people's bones, and that takes
Yeah.
months to recover from. So it's like
Mm.
most of these the Arkham series at least, all take place over one night.
Yeah.
So like it's impossible to bring them back for that. But it would be cool, and if we could like find a way around that, or just not have the game take place over a night, that would work too.
Also a game. It's not
Huh?
real. It's also a video game. It's not
Yeah,
real.
yeah, for sure. Um, Man, this is hard, man. There's a lot of great mechanics out there, and also I'm drawing heavy, heavy blanks. I'm gonna reach for, um, I'm gonna reach for Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Its revive mechanic. I really liked its revive mechanic.
Mm.
I think it creates the right level of balance between, um, difficulty and player execution, where it allows you to kind of make up for some mistakes, but at the same time, it allows the game to be harder in other ways, and have boss fights that can rank highest in From Software's catalog of boss fights, because it's like, all right, well, we gave you this get out of jail free card, you got to use it well, or else you're in trouble here. And
Hmm.
it allows for sort of a forgiveness for simple mistakes, and allows you to push your metal as a player, and really really um, get deeper into some like more nuanced mechanics in fights.
I agree. I'm surprised you didn't go with the parry system. With how satisfying that is.
I mean, a parry system's a parry system. There's
It
a
is.
million games of parry systems.
It's just that's the best one.
I think Sekiro has the best parry. Yes.
Yeah. The cling, dude. Cling.
Go.
Mine.
Number two.
My next one is going to be the Final Fantasy VII Remake materia slotting of your weapons to allow for increased, elemental damage, for casting spells, and you being able to mix and match with them and build your team comp using that. I think that really is that extra level of depth that made the already fun on its face combat system of Final Fantasy VII Remake elevated. Pretty simple.
Why the original, or why the remake materia system over the original? Because they're
Because this one, yeah,
not super different.
they're not super different, but being more active in battle, I would find things like protect more. Not protect. I would find like some of, because I'm trying to remember. Some of them had just like what the fuck was it? Like one of them changed your attacks, I believe.
So several of them did.
Yeah, some of them did. Yeah,
several
I'm
of them did.
blanking on what they did. Those
I don't know
ones
what
were the
I
most.
don't know what they're called. Yeah, but yeah, they would like
Yeah.
give you an extra, or they would give you a new attack that you could use ATB
Yes.
for, or they would sort of change like sort of the like smaller mechanics of attacking or something like that. But yeah, there was a bunch of stuff like that.
I love it when games do that.
Those were fun. I like that. I like that. Next, I'm between a couple. I'm gonna go for decisions mattering game to game, and being able to carry over your decisions from one game to the next from the Mass Effect series. I don't know what you would
Yes.
call their dialogue system, their choice system, and stuff like that. I don't know if they had an official name for it or not.
They
But yeah,
did-
like things you do in one mattering in two, mattering in three in a non-canon way. Like there's no like. Like whatever you did in the first or second game carries over in the game. And the game just knows that you did these things if you loaded your save or whatever. Where like
Yeah.
Witcher tried to do something like that, but they didn't build the first two Witcher games to be like that. So they just have a section early in Witcher 3 where it's like, hey, did you go this way or that way? And you're like, oh, okay, I did this, and
Yeah.
the game basically asks you, what did you do? And then reacts off of that. Whereas like Mass Effect from the jump was like, if we get the opportunity to do more, these choices will matter and we'll go forward with it, which is really cool. And I think is the most unique thing about Mass Effect.
When I was younger playing that game for the first time, that was so, because Mass Effect 2 was on its way out. Like it had almost arrived, and I wanted to play the original one because I had heard, well, you can just, it carries over. At the time, that was so impactful to me. It was like, that you can do that? You can make decisions and it goes to the next one? This breaks new ground. It's amazing. And what do you know? Became one of the best franchises to ever do it, to ever exist in gaming.
Oh, for sure.
Mm,
We
yeah.
need more Mass Effect in our lives. But yeah, I love, Yeah, and it gave so much more weight to choices, and it
Yeah.
allowed you and it paved the way for things like Walking Dead, and it paved the way
Yes.
for just Telltale series in general for stuff like that, and
The
it
role
was just
model.
really really impactful. And for a triple A, uh, uh, mainstream franchise to do that is insane. That's so much work.
Yeah, it really is. What also was a lot of work. My voice just died for a second. What also was a lot of work were the Elden Ring Ashes of War. Like I said, I love things that change your attack properties, and it allow you to do things like my favorite one was with my giant greatsword, do a roar ability that when you did that, you can hold R2 instead of doing regular heavy attacks, you do like savage attacks, and you would do fast like flurry of blows with his giant greatsword, or you can make it to where he does the giant leaping forward flip or calling down lightning to strike opponents. It really is what helped those From Software games really, expound upon their weapon-based combat system, and it's something that they will be doing in the future with all of their Souls-like type games, and also just even the aspect of going around finding them in the giant world of Elden Ring was a fun way to get cool collectibles that actually had a benefit on the back end of things, which were the Ashes of War. I resolved to get every single one of them, and I believe I did, unless I skipped one. Because I'd maybe gotten locked out of it for some reason. I know that happened with the weapons, but I love the Ashes of War, and I'm looking forward to when they implement that even more going forward.
Okay. Next. Oh man, that's hard. What are we on? We're on 3 now?
Yep, that was my third one. So
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go for something kind of generic or mainstream or whatever, but like at the same time, like there's bigger purpose behind it. Game feel is like one of the most important things to me in a video game. If it doesn't feel right to move, to attack, to traverse your world, to interact with your world, if game feel doesn't feel right, it'll turn me off so quick. It's why like Final Fantasy 16 didn't work for me, is because game feel isn't right for the type of game it's trying to be. In that, an even more slept on and underrated part of games is traversal. Traversal is so important in video games, and it gets so slept on so heavily. Like, if your game does not feel good to move around, especially if it's like big and an open world thing, like it'll kill your entire game. Jak 2 is this way for me, where like it has an awful traversal system. Off of that, though, swinging in Spider-Man is a game in itself. You can do that for 5 hours straight and never get bored. I'm not get into a fight, not have a story beat, nothing. I could just swing through New York City all day, specifically Insomniac's Spider-Man games, and I would say the most updated version of that is Spider-Man 2. It is at its best there. You got the most air tricks. You've got your most options for swinging around the city. You can do cool things like if you need to make a sharp turn, you can web the edge of a building and fling yourself around it real quick. The web wings are awesome. Spoilers for the review. The web wings are awesome and all this. Traversal in all 3 of the Insomniac Spider-Man games are so good, and they've only been getting better as they go along. But yeah, web swinging in Marvel's Spider-Man is one of the best mechanics in games of all time.
It is super satisfying playing that older game. I'm assuming it's even better in 2. Yeah. And it was so cool just to, as you said, go through New York City. Just whoa. It's one of the coolest traversal systems in the game, in gaming.
Yeah,
I love it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure, by far.
One other system mechanic that really shakes the world is Red Dead Redemption's Deadeye system of slowing down time to shoot people and marking them and whatnot. And Tavin's coughing. My take was so terrible to him that he's coughing. But the thing is that he didn't even know I was not finished yet, because really that's the unrealized version of it. The fully realized version is from another Rockstar game, unless they made the first 2 games, which is the Max Payne's Bullet Time, which does the same exact function.
No, those are 2 different things. Those are 2 different things.
You slow down time, you shoot people. It's the same kind of mechanic of slowing down time and shooting people. But in that one, it's one where it's all about movement. You're dodging. Of course, you can just come out from behind cover and use that to shoot people.
In Red Dead, it is, where do you want the bullets to go? In Max Payne, it's like have slow-mo so you have a cool, like, flashy style of bullets, but you still have to, like, really aim and time the bullets out and stuff.
Which is better. I think it's a better way to go about it.
So you want bullet time from Max Payne. You don't want Deadeye from Red Dead. is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because and it's also in addition to the dodging, like of you doing the dives and you could
Yeah,
go
yeah.
off large platforms. It just added it up to the cinematic flair while also making gameplay not just be an instant win because you still have to aim and you have to know where you're going because there are sometimes I would do all this cool shooting motions, diving, and then I'd fall and then you fell on the ground, so he has to get up, and there's just guys looking down at you and light you up with bullets. So it had more intelligence needed to make it work, and definitely made Max Payne 3, my recent experience of that one, much better. Love that.
Bullet time's awesome. I love
It
it.
is.
Deadeye is whack. Deadeye's
You
boring.
don't like it, huh?
Deadeye's boring. That's the like point to win type thing.
Mm.
And it's like to me, it's funny that you equate those two things because to me, Deadeye is a lesser version of the VATS system from Fallout.
Fair, yeah.
Because like in VATS, it's like it's all based off of percentages and dice rolls on whether or not you're gonna hit the target. Whereas like Deadeye, it's just like you're gonna hit the target.
Yeah, it's insta win.
Yeah. Um, God, I forgot where I was gonna go next because it was such a disrupting take. I like bullet time. I like that. Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for my fourth pick. I'm gonna go with the fuse mechanic from Persona.
Ah, yes.
I think that's what makes it unique because like the idea behind Persona is it's kind of like Pokemon where there's monsters and you got to go collect them and bring them into sort of your Rolodex of monsters that you can cycle through and build your team out with. But the thing about the fuse mechanic is that there are certain personas that you can't use or you can't find without sacrificing. You basically have to combine 2 or 3, or I think you can like go up to like 5 or something like that, and you can combine a bunch of different persona to create a new one with crazy stats or unique like elemental types or whatever. So like you can kind of take one persona and kind of give it some other bonus stats that it wouldn't have unless you had fused it with persona B or whatever, to create persona C and stuff like that. I think that adds a level of creativity and a level of player agency that one gives persona its unique sort of flair, but it also makes it, in my opinion, more intelligent than Pokemon.
No, some people criticize Pokemon for being too easy nowadays.
Yeah.
So,
Nowadays.
Yeah. Well, people would, I'm not the versed guy on Pokemon, but apparently there seem to be a lot more things you could do in the old games to amp up difficulty and not make it such a cakewalk. Whereas the way modern Pokemon works, that's just way easier to do.
Yeah.
Non-Pokemon fan saying this, don't crucify me. I might be wrong. I'm not God here, right? Okay.
Final pick, Connor. Final pick.
Yeah. You see, I was even looking at, yeah, it is tough. I was looking at my top 10 games that we did a long, long time ago on this show about what is the best. Because I have one in my mind, 2 in my mind, really, but there has to be a third one. But you know what? I'm just going to go and... Yeah, you know what? Let's go with this one, right? One of the a slept-on game. What am I talking about? It's not at all. People talk about it all the time. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I cannot remember what the system is called, but it was something that would, fast-paced slash attack mode, which not only brought with it some of the coolest cinematic moments of that game, and also made some. It really, actually, I'm wrong. It's cinematic. That's its main purpose. It's not something you can just throw out with all the time. Of course, if you have like meter to use it, it's a very good way to get like a bunch of damage on people.
What you're speaking of specifically is Rising Revengeance. For those who don't know, had a thing where like you could kind of slow it down, almost like the Deadeye or whatever, and do a bunch of slashes or whatever. But like where you cut mattered, like
yes,
and it would cut off pieces of your enemy like in the way that you wanted to cut them.
Which is what come into play with boss fights. When they throw something at you, they'd have things that you would have to cut on their body, and you would use that slow mo time just to do cool, fast paced slashes. That just I think is really what helped bring up the craziness level on Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance to result in those moments that everybody kind of remembers that game to have, particularly with its boss fights.
See, now, Connor, you've put me in a hard place because you've reminded me of another mechanic in another Metal Gear game that I would like to talk about. But do I talk about that because it's more fun and interesting and a cooler mechanic, or do I talk about a mechanic that instantly, as soon as it came out, every other game in its genre aped it, and took it. And that's a hard thing to do. I'm gonna go for the more fun, the more personal take, and I'm gonna say the Fulton recovery system in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, but also Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. There's nothing more fun than entering an enemy base, knocking everybody out, Fultoning them back to your base, and basically brainwashing them to work for you. It's awesome. It's so fun. It's just something that like you just casually are just doing all the time. And you're like, you will ignore mission objectives to make sure you pick up everybody and send them back to base and so forth. It's so much fun. Sort of adds personality, and it really lets you feel like you're actually building out a militia or building an army, as opposed to just the game telling you that you're building an army or that you're getting bigger. Like you're like, oh, that's Todd, who I just broke recording.
I captured from that camp in Afghanistan.
But yeah, stuff like that. And then you see them on base and you go, I remember you. I remember knocking your ass out and stuff. So like, yeah, it's a really, really good mechanic, and I love it. Starting in Peace Walker, evolving and getting better in Phantom Pain. In some ways overall I like Peace Walker more as a game. But in some ways that Fulton mechanic was better in Phantom Pain, which was really, really fun and exciting. So yeah, I'm gonna take that as my final pick.
Good one.
What I was gonna grab. Yeah, good. I like both these lists.
Yeah.
Comment down below which list you think is better. It's important. Who won?
It is important.
I was thinking about. It almost made the list because I was just struggling to think of better ones. I was gonna do Apex Legends ping system, pinging where's ammo, pinging a gun, pinging enemy locations, pinning. Points of interest and stuff like that. That started at Apex, and immediately everybody took it. Fortnite within the week or two, Fortnite was like, oh, we have that too. Warzone took it. Like everybody took it from Apex, and it started in Apex, which I still think is the best battle royale game. But yeah, every battle royale, a ping system is required now because of that. It's a really useful tool. But that's why I took away from it, because it's a tool. It's not it's a game mechanic, but it's a tool. It's not like a fun thing that you're doing. Whereas the best game mechanics are ones that are engaging and allow you to play.
Those are always the best ones. You're right about that.
Yeah.
And that definitely helps when you're trying to give directions to your teammates.
Oh, 100%.
More often than not, that saved things.
100%. You can't make a battle royale now without a ping system. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for your newest episode of The Piggy Bank. Remember, you can catch this show every Saturday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. But you can also watch us live over at twitch.tv/2pennygames, Sundays at 4 p.m. Central Time, to make sure, and you also get it a week early if you watch it live. You know what we're going to talk about well in advance. So make sure you hop on over to the Twitch side, follow, and turn your alerts on for us. But make sure you also on YouTube or podcast services subscribe, follow, share with a friend. It really does help us out, and it is really important. Let us know down below what you think is going to be in the Big Six of the Game Awards this year. Let us know who won the draft pick. And until next time, have a great time. Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye.